So now we're transitioning into the updates from different members. And we have a really rich program today. So let me start off with affinity groups. For those of you who haven't been with us, we have what we call affinity groups within the BPRG. So people have a particular interest, they'll put it out there and let the BPRG group know, and then arrange for meetings away from these meetings. We as the BPRG don't monitor what they're doing, but we enable the communication to go amongst the groups. I mean, for people to find each other. So I've got people who I'm very grateful to who volunteered to give us updates. And I'm going to start with Andrew Essington, who's going to tell us about the Resurrected Ketamine Assisted Psychotherapy Affinity Group. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew. I'm an ICU nurse in Boston. And like Anne said, we're going to be resurrecting the ketamine assisted psychotherapy group. I am collaborating with a doctor based out of Medford, who's opening her own integrative health practice, Dr. Marnie Charnoff, and she's opening a practice in Medford called Joy in Health, and that's going to be one of the modalities that she's offering. But I'm hoping to restart the affinity group for anyone who has an interest in ketamine, anyone who is a practitioner who's actively working with that medicine. And I think it can have a lot of applications from, I'm also interested in palliative and end of life care. So anything from treatment-resistant depression to palliative care. I don't have a specific idea of what the group will be. I'd really like to get some member feedback if that's something that interests you. From what I understand, the previous incarnation of the group did a lot of sharing of case studies, talked about protocols, dosages, ways to integrate, and that's all things that I'm very interested in doing. And I think the group culminated in hosting a training where Phil Wolfson came to Boston, and they were able to have their own training. So I will leave my contact info in the chat group, and if you'd like to reply to that, if you're interested, I'm planning on meeting once a month or once every other month to offset when BPRG meets. And so if you're interested, please shoot me an email and an evening that would work best for you. I'm envisioning every other month in one weekday evening. So thank you, and I look forward to connecting with more of you.
Great. Thank you for doing that, Andrew. And I'm going to ask, the people know this already. I don't think I'm pulling this as a fast one on you, but everyone who's giving an update, I'm going to ask you to send Sherry and me just a few sentences about what you're doing so we can include it in the next email, since not all the members come to the meetings and there may be other members who would be interested in these updates. So, yep, and putting your contact info here is a great way to get started. Great. Or if anyone hears this and can't find Andrew, just write us on the BPRG email. Great. Thank you, Andrew. Lance Linke, the Clinician Support Affinity Group.
Yeah, we're running what was previously known as a Harm Reduction and Integration Group for clinicians. We've been using this forum to kind of go over clinical case examples and discuss integration. So anybody that is in clinical practice that would like to use this forum to share stories and improve clinical skills around this, that's one of the modalities. Naturally, I'll put my name and email address down there. So if anybody's interested, they can certainly reach out to us. And we've been meeting quarterly and plan to do so, I anticipate in late March. So, but I'll have those dates posted and share that in the blurb that I'll send to Anne.
Great. Thank you so much, Lance. Then Rebecca Slater to tell us about a group that she's forming, a newly forming Veterans Affinity Group.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Rebecca. I did do little slides here because otherwise I get scattered my own sort of stuff. So my name is Rebecca Slater, and I am starting an affinity group for veterans with a veterans focus. The idea is to create a community within BPRG that creates connection, engagement, and support for veterans themselves, their families, or their people who are just interested in helping the cause. The idea is that with that engagement and with that support, we can really start to move the needle to increase access, towards accelerated healing. Why now? Like, who am I? Why am I starting this? So at the end of the day, I'm a mom, I'm a stepmom. I'm also a defense employee. So my connection through veterans is a lot of it through the work that I do and as a citizen and a human. And you might be thinking, well, what do those have to do with veterans? And so in my family, I'm firsthand through kind of my stepson, I see the impacts of some developmental trauma, some early childhood developmental trauma, and how that manifests daily. And so that's really, in a lot of ways, how I came to BPRG, through exploration of what's possible in healing there. But as I started to really open my eyes to what's going on, I see what's happening with post 9/11, what I'm kind of calling the trauma tsunami, right? If I see it with just a little bit, what's coming home from the last 20 plus years of war is not good for our future because of what that creates. And so as somebody who sort of wandered the mental health system, no offense to you wonderful professionals who are doing good work, but there's a lot of gaps for those with trauma and complex trauma. I really think that there's an opportunity to improve the access. So with this, like, I just started joining between BPRG. I also joined the Heroic Hearts Project last year. So I'm teaming with that group as an ambassador to increase awareness and access. And merging that with BPRG is my hope to really be able to support. The veteran community is unique in a lot of ways that many folks who aren't affiliated don't understand, especially if you have a clearance or are a veteran. You can't just be open about it. I have clearance, like, you can't just openly talk about these because your jobs are on the line, your benefits are on the line. So first and foremost, something that has trust and understanding where veterans can come. They can find support. Maybe they just want to listen anonymously. What's great about this group, as I was telling Jesse and my ambassador lead with Heroic Hearts, is you don't have to use your real name. You don't have to turn your Zoom camera on. You can come and just listen and learn. A lot of these folks are Google searching at night undercover. So how do we get them information? How can we identify needs and provide resources for them? Really allow that exploration to happen. And as their trust and their understanding, grows, how can they connect, join the community, listen, share, ask for help, find help, and amplify each other? If they have a friend, maybe we can bring in some speakers. Maybe we can, do what we can to really affect and make this happen. And finally, energize. If for those who want to take it further, how do we, increase, bring our needs to this group? Maybe there's people in this group who can help solve some problems at the end of the day to accelerate that healing. So that's really kind of what I see as a vision. It could shift. It's really, this is my ideas in a PowerPoint deck today with some input of some close friends and experts. But it's really what the group wants to make it, and with the willingness and the trust we have with each other that we can create. So here's my information. I'll put it in the chat as well. But please reach out if you're interested or have someone who might be sending my way.
Wonderful. Beautiful, Rebecca. Thank you so much for all your thought and energy behind this project. It's really, really important. So
thank you. Thank you for allowing me the forum to share. I appreciate it.
Great. Terrific. Thanks. Well, I have two brief updates from other affinity groups. The leaders couldn't be with us today. So first, Elise Hoblitzel, who's now running the Contemplative Practices and Psychedelics Affinity Group. And this is from Elise. After our January meeting, I sent an email to everyone in the group with a summary and update of plans moving forward. We will meet monthly, alternating between the second Wednesday of the month from 7:30 to 9 p.m., including February 9th, and then the following month on the second Saturday from 10 to 11:30 in the morning. Eileen Casella-Ryder is offering to support me in facilitating. I'll meet with her next week. She wrote this to me probably 10 days ago, so maybe they've already met. You've already met Eileen to learn more.
We're meeting tomorrow.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you, Eileen. So anyways, Eileen is going to help, and another new member recently set up a signal group for people to connect between meetings. So that's Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Elise, for all you're doing. The other group, Amanda Kim, who's a psychiatry resident at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, is running a therapist in training affinity group. And she said, the affinity group is humming along. I'm working on organizing our winter meeting, hopefully in person this month. So that's it for affinity groups. So we have other projects. James Davis, if you're with us from Decrim, Massachusetts. I didn't check.
That's me. Hi, Anne.
You're here. Hey, James, glad you're here.
Glad you invited me. Always so humbled to be invited. And I'm one of the volunteer leaders with Bay Staters for Natural Medicine. We're a grassroots group that has ended the war on drugs in 4 cities across Massachusetts. So Somerville, Cambridge, Northampton, and East Hampton have made it to where no one is arrested for growing and exchanging entheogenic plants, and then all possession arrests for all controlled substances, including MDMA, LSD, these other compounds we know are therapeutic and helpful, depending on set and setting, are diverted from arrest as well. And we found out this week that Somerville has entirely eliminated its narcotics unit as a result of us making these policies official in these cities and continuing to do so. Next month, Burlington, Vermont is set to pass our measure. We are also have committed city councilors in Amherst, where we have a great deal of students working to decriminalize not just growing and transporting entheogenic plants and all controlled substance possession, but also decriminalizing manufacture of LSD, MDMA, MDA, and 5-MeO-DMT, mostly as a symbolic measure because all the precursors are still very illegal federally, and you need zoning regulations on where those things are produced for safety. But we see this as a very great symbolic measure of where our movement can take us. We also have pending measures that we're very confident will pass in the next couple months in Medford, Salem, Massachusetts, Revere, Newton, and the Needham Public Health Commission seems to be on its way as well. Worcester on Monday, and then over the next month, we'll be debating whether or not to pass a measure ordering the city manager to study decriminalization, particularly through the lens of veterans and first responders. That measure is very, very likely to pass as well as a first step to decriminalizing the city of Worcester. In Boston, we have 5 city councilors privately committed to the decriminalization of Boston and the passage of our measure there. We have Black clergy, we have sheriff's candidates, people in the sheriff's office who are privately supportive. And basically, we're just lining up the ammunition to really pull the trigger on decriminalizing Boston. And they're getting almost 3 emails a day from constituents who are in support of the policy to end all drug possession arrests and decriminalize growing, gathering, and giving entheogenic plants. So I hope those updates are exciting. In terms of upcoming events, we have Plant Medicine Palooza that's coming up on March 12th. It's here in Somerville. It'll be from noon to 4 p.m. We're going to have professional mushroom growers in our network with melanated mycology and a few private businesses that grow legal mushrooms, teach people how to grow. We're going to be teaching people how to grow cacti as well. And then we have some therapists who are not very rosy on the medicalization scenario. There's a lot of those across Massachusetts who are going to be teaching trip-sit trainings as well. This is going to be a huge event, potentially 70 or 80 people coming and splitting into groups to learn all of these important skills. We had a training in Worcester that had about 50 attendees for growing. We had a online training for trip sitting with the POC Psychedelic Collective and a few of our healers who don't have fancy degrees. They don't have a clinical background, but they have a background in having a rough life and being able to hold space for people. And that event had about 80 attendees from 10 different countries, and I think about 10 states as well. So Bay Staters just aims to educate. we don't fundraise money. We don't want money. We give money to local mutual aid groups. And our mission is just make these plant medicine therapies as accessible for people as possible. We have a mental health care system where 6 in 10 people who can afford therapy still can't find a therapist because their logs are so full. So we just see a whole scale change in our mental health care system as necessary to help people who are excluded from it, from immigrants with a different background to people who really just can't connect with their therapists, even if they have a lot of training. So that's a little bit about our work. I'm happy to answer questions too. And as always, Anne, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, James. It sounds like you're doing really important work and it's moving ahead quickly. Congratulations.
Is there a link for the Palooza thing, or how do we find information about that?
So it's on our social media. And then if you drop your email in the link, I'll be sure to reach out to you and add you to the calendar invite too. Because attendance is probably going to be so high, if any of you are interested in helping teach one of those classes, we're probably going to split people into separate groups so that they can ask more questions too. So if you are interested in even just coming to have fun, it's also a barbecue. If you're interested in just coming for fun, that's great. But if you want to help out, you can also, there's probably going to be spots open to do that.
James, is, Massachusetts is so well endowed with research universities. Have you been able to connect with anybody to take a look at what's happening differentially in the communities that do pass these measures versus the communities that don't? All sorts of things. I mean, obviously you're going to have fewer arrests and things like that, but also to see, there are other ways to try to measure mental health, emergency room issues. Is there anybody trying to monitor this to come up with data?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I really appreciate it too. So that's been our research team, just having an ongoing relationship with the police departments. Of course, the way police departments code data and all those interactions that they have with people, we don't get to see them in person. We get to see, the after effects. So we're tracking it pretty closely, but I would love any connections to academics that want to formalize that work, because for us, it's mostly public records requests and then also having good relationships with the police departments and building those relationships. Right. In terms of like measuring the effects, I would love to see, like a multivariable analysis done nationwide to really kind of measure what the secondary mental health impacts are. So maybe there's even a study that we could help design in one of these cities.
I mean, I'm just imagining that there's a lot of possible master's theses and doctoral dissertations that could come out of this if there could just be the connecting of you to people who have interest in trying to measure this.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea, definitely.
And you're getting lots of interest in the chat, James, so make sure you get those emails. We'll also send, when we do our next email, the follow-up email from this meeting, if you want to send us some information, we'll put it in there.
Sounds
Great.
good.
Thank you so much. Alex Cardenas giving us an update on the APPA.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Anne. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Well, my name's Alex. I am, I am the interim co-executive director for what we're calling APPA for short. We say it so often, the American Psychedelic Practitioner Association, partially born out of BPRG a couple years ago. And the great announcement is we just elected our board. Some super amazing folks, and I'll put our website here in the chat so people can check those folks out. And that's really setting us up to step on the gas for some of the stuff, for the many things that we're focusing on. Oops, I've lost my screen. Here we go. So here's our website, and I'll put my email there in a second. But so we just launched our board. It's very exciting. And we are in the depths of trying to fundraise so we can really supercharge our efforts. And so you'll see a link also on our website for fundraising if you're interested in supporting us. And right now, I've talked to this group a couple times about the different working groups that we have going on. We have an ethics group, and they've been amassing all the different ethical guidelines that have been written in a hope to kind of create a consensus document. We have a JEDI team that both looks at our internal structures, bylaws, as well as looks at all the policies that we're going to be putting out there. And the months ahead, we're building the teams for standards of care and standards of training. That's been a bit of a shift in our focus, is to build those out in parallel. And that was at the strong urging of several consultants saying these things inform each other too much to do one and then the other. So we're going to do them in parallel. So we're building those teams out now, with the current vision being a stakeholder group that has representatives from some of the major organizations like MAPS, Encompass, and USONA, and et cetera, and another group that is mostly headed up by practitioners that are in the field to kind of balance out the expertise that are building these documents, with the hope that in the next 6 to 9 months, we'll have drafts that will be able to then start circulating amongst the community to get feedback and build consensus. Because at the end of the day, having standards of care and standards of training are kind of critical infrastructure level policies that can really help the field develop, but also are crucial in getting psychedelic assisted therapies integrated into the healthcare system. So, and that for us is crucial for access, because without that, we're talking about millions of Americans not being able to afford this care without insurance covering it. So that's one of the main tasks there. And we're also building out a few other groups, an elder council, as well as an accountability working group to really think about how to best support clients and practitioners when there's accusations of wrongdoing. You know, what's going to be the best way to handle that. And that's also, again, all these things are critical to healthcare adoption. State regulators want to know what the accountability process is before they approve it. So we're really just trying to create the roadmap for what it's going to take to get these treatments adopted into healthcare, and then cover that base. So those are the things that we're working on the most right now. And that's really for our kind of medicalization arm. And then ultimately, when we are fully funded and up and running, then the real fun begins, when we get to actually build out what this organization can do for our members, and what, you know, mentorship and professional development and just straight up support looks like on a national scale to bring this community together. So a lot's happening very quickly. We have probably over 30 volunteers at the moment working on different projects. I imagine that number is going to double, if not triple, in the few months ahead. So please reach out if you're interested in getting involved. I'll put my email in the chat in a second. Reach out, ask questions if you guys have them. We're happy to meet with folks and answer questions. We are very much co-creating this association. So I'm part of the leadership, but that doesn't mean that I say what's going on. It's really a member-driven organization, and we're hoping to take official members in the months ahead. But in the meantime, if people have ideas or wants, because we don't necessarily just want to recreate the APA, AMAs of the world, we want to really make something new for our community. So thank you so much for being here and supporting us along the way.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's wonderful to see all the good work that Jeremy started from here.
That's right.
It's supported. Yeah. Thank you, all of you, for what you're doing. It's really important work. Next, I'd like to invite Bhavia Rajana. She's going to tell us about a project she's working on through her practice at Sapiens. And also, I'd like to introduce her as the new head of the Alumni Association for the CIS CPTR program. So, Bhavia.
Thank you, Anne. Hi, everyone. I'm Bhavia. I graduated from CPTR I was the part of 2020 cohort. And we founded Sapiens Therapy in Massachusetts, along with my partner, Karen Scott. We are building a residential clinician retreat. Here, let me share my screen for a second. Let's see. I'm not able to share the screen anyway. That's okay. So we are building a 7-day, 7-night residential clinician retreat that combines ketamine along with internal family systems. We have an IFS trainer partnering with us, Jennifer Baldwin. She's here on today with the meeting as well. She's done over 100 ketamine sessions, combining and integrating that with IFS, and we've seen remarkable improvement and significant positive outcomes. So we wanna see how we can integrate these modalities and offer a comprehensive psychotherapy model. So it will be from April 29th to May 7th. We're finalizing the details, but I wanted to share that in this meeting because I know our next meeting is going to be in a couple of months. Oh, thank you, Sherry. Thanks for sharing that. Please reach out to us if you're interested. We are only, this is going to be a very small group. We're looking to journey with about 6 to 10 clinicians. The week will involve a lot of about 50 hours or so of IFS didactic training, and along with creating therapy dyads and doing 2 or 3 ketamine experiential sessions, learning how to work in the therapy dyad and building a safe container. And also we'll be doing some integrative trauma care and learning the basics of that. Meditation and self-care for clinicians and all the other good things. And you can, I'll put the email contact info for that, and you can reach out to either me or Jennifer. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this here.
Great. Thank you very much, Bhavia. And thanks for what you're doing, for all you're doing with the Alumni Association too. It's an important group. So
it's a roller coaster ride, but it's nice. It's just begun.
Yes, there are a lot of us on this call, so we all are grateful to you. Speaking of grads, Leah Mix, who actually started the Alumni Association, I think was supposed to be here, but I'm not sure she is. So, nope. All right. So move on to Mark Bates and Bob Kaufman, who are going to give us updates on a veterans research survey. They'll tell us more about that. And then also about the licensing board for psychedelic medicine and therapy. I'll let Mark and Bob do their dance for us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Mark, would you like to begin or would you like me to?
Bob, I was thinking you were going to cover both, but I'm glad to follow you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for teeing this up. Mark and I, along with Alan Davis and Rachel Yehuda and Eric London and Katinka Hoyer, devised a veteran harm reduction survey that actually went live last week. And this harm reduction survey is really going to look at veteran practices for the use of psychedelics, whether it's for healing, recreational, existential, experiential use. We're also looking at attitudes towards non-use, and importantly, we're also going to be considering the effect that the psychedelic use has on veteran suicide or suicidal ideation. For those of you who aren't aware, Mark and I, both veterans, approached the veteran community as an underserved population. Not all veterans, obviously, are receiving disability. Many of them aren't even receiving pensions or really any type of support once they leave. This is in contrast, or despite the fact that about 11 to 20% of veterans who participated in this long war, OIF and OEF for the last 20 years, have PTSD. And despite the fact that veteran suicide rate, as you all know, is elevated at about 1.5 times what a non-veteran's suicide incidence is. And so there's a tremendous need. Veterans are using psychedelics in large numbers. Alan Davis, we actually carried a link to Alan Davis's article that he published a couple months ago, chronicling the use of entheogens by veterans. And the problem is that we don't really know, nor does the VA know, how veterans are using psychedelics, how they're being helped or harmed. And so the study that we will have a link to in the, I guess, the BPRG webpage and newsletter is a snowball survey, meaning it can be sent to any veteran to take. We're hoping to enroll about 1,000 veterans, and we do have a small gift, a monetary gift for their participation in this 15 to 40-minute survey. Mark, did I cover everything?
Yeah, I might, yeah, Bob, that was an excellent summary. The maybe a couple other things I'd add is we're definitely not including active duty. This is just for veterans who've left service. And we are including veterans who've not used psychedelics. We consider it there are 2 surveys within the study, and we believe it's really important to understand for veterans that don't have much knowledge about psychedelics or have chosen not to use psychedelics, what their concerns are, because we feel like it's very important in the future to be responsive, and especially if the VA decides to offer psychedelic assisted therapy in the future. Thanks.
So Mark and I will publish our email addresses if anyone has any questions, but you'll be seeing the link to the Mount Sinai survey. And again, that link can be shared with any veteran. And this is an entirely anonymous survey. And as Mark was mentioning, we definitely do not want active duty members taking the survey. That will be no bueno. That will, as you know, for the reasons that Rebecca mentioned, a lot of individuals are reluctant, even veterans are reluctant to disclose their psychedelic use for whatever reason. I just have a very brief update on the Board of Psychedelic Medicine and Therapies. This, as Alex was saying, the Board of Psychedelic Medicine and Therapies, which is closely aligned with APA, is developing a certification examination that should be available later this year. It will be the initial certification examination will be for licensed personnel. Next year, we hope to be able to develop a certifying exam for unlicensed personnel, which will be much more heterogeneous and a little more challenging to put together a certifying exam. But this board will have a functioning website next month, and I'll put the link in the newsletter as well. The link is pmtboard.org. And again, you all will have my contact info for any questions.
Great. Thank you. And Bob is, as usual, self-effacing. Bob is head of that board. So thank you, Bob, for taking the leadership of that. It's going to make a big difference. And did you have something you wanted to put up for, Ron's going to give a Sunstone update, or do one of you want to start a Sunstone update and then pass it to Ron? You
Or
said
else
you-
I can lead, and then in the same way that Mark added some additional information to what Bob described, that's another way to do it. And I was actually going to kick off and just sort of give thanks to Mark and Bob here, not only for updating us on all the work they're doing with veterans, but they're both members of Sunstone Therapies, and so greetings. And although I guess I'll do a little bit of talking here, it's obviously a team effort. So please chime in and add detail to anything that I'm just going to briefly describe. I'm not sure if Yvonne is on the call either, but Yvonne Bessant is a fellow at Dana-Farber, and he is part of the Sunstone team. But really what I was hoping to do is just, give an update. And, I'm not sure that everyone who's on the call right now has heard of Sunstone Therapy, so it may be helpful just to give a quick description of what the organization is about and where we've come so far. Sunstone was formed, I don't know the exact date, but it's getting on almost 2 years now, to bring psychedelic therapy into cancer care. And two oncologists in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area experienced during their careers that although they were trained to treat cancer, they felt that they didn't have tools at their disposal to help address the psychological distress that their patients were going through. And so they set about researching ways that they might be able to bring some method of care to their patients, and had heard about psychedelic therapy and pursued it. And I think that was probably some of the initial impetus that led to Sunstone being formed. And that is Sunstone's mission. There's a couple of things I should say about the organization that I think add detail as to sort of how it's proceeding and what its, I guess I'll call it, its therapeutic model is. So Sunstone is trying to help or address this psychological distress that cancer patients experience, but it's working with a group therapy model. More specifically, we call it simultaneous administration, where several patients are simultaneously given psychedelic therapy with one therapist attending them instead of two. And then I guess the lead therapist monitors remotely through a system for safety and therapeutic reasons. We built at a cancer center just outside of Washington, D.C., a beautiful physical space in which to conduct our research and also at some point, clinical treatments. It's called the Bill Richards Center for Healing, and Bill Richards, who many of you have heard of, is probably one of the most experienced psychedelic therapists with cancer patients. And he heads our therapy team. The main, that kind of brings us up to like, what is Sunstone Therapies? I'd say where we are in our evolution now, it's really fascinating. I guess, I'm trying to think of all sorts of examples of, things that grow and develop. And so, like a human being, I guess, Sunstone was conceived, it kind of, started to develop. And it grew at a rate that was organic and appropriate for what it was the first year or two. There were no full-time employees. It was an all-volunteer army. We contributed money to be able to pay bills to get things going. And as often happens with these organizations, and I think it's a really cool process, it just starts to snowball. And other people find out about it, or however it all happens. That's a bit of a mystery, but it's beautiful. More resources come to bear. And so the first research project was completed last year. There's been a press release on it. It was very successful, and the write-up will be published in the not so distant future. But here's where Sunstone is now. So Sunstone's gotten to the point where the all-volunteer army can't keep powering the organization's growth. And so the first full-time employees have really, come to be in the company. Of the founding team, Dr. Paul Thomby, who's the chief medical officer. And I have to just sort of give thanks to Paul, because I think it's just such a courageous thing that he's done. He's left his practice as an oncologist to, sorry for the dog there, to be full-time the CMO at Sunstone. Kim Roddy, who was the director of the Aquiline Cancer Center, that's the physical space where we built the Bill Richards Center, has left her job directing that cancer center to become full-time the chief operating officer of Sunstone. Heather and Celia are heading kind of research operations, and they are now full-time. And Manish has told his partners in his medical practice that he's leaving, and he has to gradually step away just for contractual reasons. But as of June 1st, he's our CEO. He will be full-time at Sunstone. And what this means is the rate at which things have gotten done so far, which I think is amazing by itself. And there's a little bit to say about Sunstone, I guess, while I'm giving this monologue about that. But it's already happening. The rate at which Sunstone will develop now with people full-time in the organization to advance its mission is only accelerating. So we completed one research project in our first year. We have 5 in the pipeline now. One with Memorial Sloan Kettering. There's one with Dana-Farber. If Yvonne was on the call, you could talk a little bit about that. We're the first group that will be doing expanded access with MAPS. We're waiting for MAPS to kind of finish some things on their end. So I use that as examples of going from one research study last year to 5 this year. That's the rate of sort of growth, that we're starting to lean into. And then I would just say overall, I've described really generally, this sort of simultaneous administration model. I think where we are right now is we're adding detail to that therapeutic model. And we're doing this at the Bill Richards Center, but the objectives for Sunstone now, once we kind of have this more fully tuned, is to scale to other sites. So we hope this year to create 2 more sites, one in an academic setting and one in a non-academic setting. So with 5 research projects in the pipeline and those 2 sites to be built, we've got a lot on our plate. Again, my hat's off to everybody who's contributing, especially to those team members who have stepped away from very successful careers to dedicate themselves full-time to this organization. It's really incredible. So that's what's going on with Sunstone. I'll let Mark and Bob add to that kind of description because they're team members too.
Thanks, Ron. I'll say a few things. Just want to respect the time overall. It is really an honor to be part of this team. I mean, there's the things you can describe, and then there are the things beyond words. And I'll just say there's tremendous amount of rigor and also just walking the walk in terms of the spirit of the medicine, which is so important. The study that you described is really remarkable because it was 30 patients in basically less than a year. And it was a group model where 4 patients at a time, where we were simulating real world conditions. We're looking for real world scalable solutions. So we really didn't restrict the type of cancer or the phase of cancer experience. So we had survivors with advanced cancer patients, and we weren't sure how people would connect with each other. And we saw amazing connections in just 2 prep sessions. And one of the descriptions I loved was somebody saying it felt like going into battle together because they could hear each other in separate rooms. And then the day after, when they connected and shared about their experiences, really beautiful connections. I think they're the standard outcome metrics, like the MADRS, definitely reflected profound changes, but even more important are the individual experiences. One of our patients, Pradeep Bansal, who's a gastroenterologist, actually did both an article and a video on WebMD. And I'll put that in the chat because I think, his words are probably the best description of the outcomes. And I think it's worth a quick look. And thank you for letting me add a few words. Thanks.
Say one last thing, unless Bob wants to add to that, because again, to be respectful of the time. It's really been a joy. We're still in the very early stages of Sunstone's development. What's become more clear to me is that the general model of the group simultaneous administration method and of creating a dedicated site that can both conduct research and then eventually provide clinical treatments can be applied to other populations than cancer patients. And I've been invited into conversations about, seeing whether or not this model could be applied for other populations. And it's a little early, so I'm not going to go into any more detail than that right now. But I bring it up because there's a topic of interest that it touches on, which I'll just briefly state, and it's an invitation to others who may be interested in this topic, and maybe it could be an affinity group. And it really just has to do with creativity. When I look back at how Sunstone was formed, nobody planned it. Through what seem in hindsight like random meetings and associations has led to, the creation and development of growth of this beautiful organization. And I wonder myself sometimes, like, how the hell could this have happened? We couldn't plan this, And it's that type of creativity that I'm very, very interested in. And I read about it, I think about it, and I see it happening again with this other latent organization, which I would call, like a potential cousin of Sunstone or something. And it hasn't yet come into being, so it's just still on the other side. But if anybody else has experiences like this of the muse speaking and leading to creation of organizations or other things, feel free to hit me up through the chat box. I'll put my email address there, and it's a topic that I'm very interested in and would love to talk with other people about. Thanks.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, all of you, for the hard work and inspiration. Thanks.
Sure.
So I have one really brief update, because then I think we do need a break before we get started with Dennis. I just want to let people know about the CIS CPTR course. As you know, we're just finishing up, or most of you know, we're just finishing up the first Boston cohort. We have 120 trainees in that, and we're going to, they should be graduating. The graduation date is June 4th, but they should be finished by the end of March. So that's really exciting. And we're starting a 2022 cohort in April. We're going to have 103 in Boston, 149 in San Francisco, and 70 online. So a total of 322. So if anyone wants to know more about the training program, you can reach out to me, or there are many graduates on this call too. So thank you, one and all. What a rich sharing we've just had. Really wonderful. So we'll take a 10-minute break, but try and be back a little before 2 so we can get started right promptly at 2 with Dennis McKenna, who promises to be a treat for all of us. So thank you all.